Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be reading another Black History Month read aloud called Hidden Figures, the true story of 4 Black women and the space race. And this book received a Nonviolent Social Change, Peace, Brotherhood, and Honor Coretta Scott King Award. It was written by the New York Times best-selling author Margot Lee Shetterly with Winifred Conkling and illustrated by Laura Freeman. So I want you to make a prediction. What do you think it's going to be about? Hidden Figures, the true story of 4 Black women and the space race. Hidden Figures. What do you think it might be about? Let's see. Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Christine Darden were very good at math. Really good. In 1943, the United States was at war, World War II. Dorothy Vaughan wanted to serve her country by working for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, the government agency that designed airplanes. Having the best airplanes would help America win the war. Making airplanes fly faster and higher and safer meant doing a lot of tests at the agency's Langley Laboratory in Hampton, Virginia. Tests meant numbers. Numbers meant math. And math meant computers. Today we think of computers as machines, but in the 1940s, computers were actual people like Dorothy, Mary, Katherine, and Christine. Their job was to do math. Because Dorothy was Black and a woman, some people thought it would be impossible for her to get a job as a computer. She lived in Virginia, a southern state, where laws segregated or kept apart Black people and white people. They could not eat in the same restaurants. They could not drink from the same water fountains. They could not use the same restrooms. They could not attend the same schools. They could not play on the same sports teams. They could not sit near each other in movie theaters, and they could not marry someone of a different race. But Dorothy didn't think it was impossible. She was good at math, really good. She knew she was the right person for the job. She applied, and the laboratory offered her a position as a computer. At work, Blacks and whites were kept apart. The white computers worked in one building, and Dorothy and the other Black computers worked in a different building, in their separate offices. Even though they worked on the same kinds of assignments, the Black computers and white computers used separate bathrooms and ate in separate lunchrooms. So these people are called computers because they did a lot of complicated math that our computers today do. America won the war in 1945, but Dorothy stayed on the job, still trying to make airplanes faster and safer. By 1951, the Americans and the Russians were competing to see who could build the best planes. That meant more experiments and more numbers, lots and lots of numbers. And more numbers meant the need for more computers. So during this time, America and Russia were having what they called in the title the space race. And they were racing to see who could make the best technology to go to space and the best planes, things like that. That's when Mary Jackson got a job as a computer at Langley. She worked in a group that tested model airplanes in wind tunnels. A wind tunnel was a machine like a huge metal box with a powerful fan attached. Mary put model airplanes in the wind tunnel and blasted them with air from the fan. This experiment helped her group improve their designs on the models before building full-sized airplanes. so she had a really important role. Mary wanted to become an engineer, but officials said it was impossible. Most of the engineers at the laboratory were men. And to become an engineer, Mary needed to take a high-level math class. But she wasn't allowed to go inside the white school where the classes were taught. But Mary was good at math, really good. And she refused to give up. She got permission to enter the school building and take the math classes, and she earned good grades. Because she didn't give up, Mary Jackson became the first African-American female engineer at the laboratory. Katherine Johnson was good at math and always asked lots of questions. In 1953, she applied to the laboratory for a computer job and was placed on a team that tested actual planes while they were flying in the air. Their research was used to figure out ways to prevent future plane crashes. In one of her first projects, she learned how to analyze turbulence or dangerous gusts of air. No one knows how many lives her work may have helped save. Katherine wanted to help the group prepare its research reports, so she asked them if she could go to meetings with other experts on her team. Her boss told her it was impossible. Women aren't allowed to attend meetings, he said, but Katherine knew she was good at math, as anyone else, maybe better. So she asked him again, and again, and again. Katherine asked her boss so many times that he finally invited her to the meetings. Katherine was good at math, really good. And because she fought to be treated the same as men, she became the first woman in her group to sign her name to one of the group's reports. So I'm hearing a lot of the same phrases over and over again. People telling them that things are impossible, and then them not giving up. These women, these 4 women that the book is about. In the 1950s, the Langley Laboratory bought a machine computer that could do math faster than the human computers. So now they have machine computers. At first, these machines made mistakes. Dorothy learned how to program the machines so that they got the right answers. She taught the women in her group how to program the computers too. In 1957, Russia launched a satellite known as Sputnik into orbit around the Earth. The United States started building satellites to explore space too. For years, the laboratory had used math to design airplanes. Now it would need math to create spaceships as well. The government decided to change the agency's name from the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics to the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, NASA. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy told Congress, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth." A man on the moon? But the first step to getting a man on the moon was to send out an astronaut around the Earth. NASA was going to need to hire more space experts and more people who were good at math. Really good. The people at the laboratory had to work together from morning to night to figure out how to send astronaut John Glenn into space and bring him back home to Earth safely. Katherine Johnson knew she could use math to help. "Tell me where you want his spaceship to land, and I'll tell you where to launch it," Katherine told her boss. Katherine helped calculate trajectories, or pathways, that rockets traveled through space. She had to plan Glenn's exact route from takeoff in Florida to splashdown in Atlantic Ocean. There was no room for error. No one was better than Katherine at solving these tricky math problems. Days before his mission, John Glenn wanted Catherine to double-check the machine computer's trajectory calculations to make sure it hadn't made any mistakes. When Catherine said the numbers were correct, Glenn was ready to go on. On February 20th, 1962, Glenn blasted off into space, circled the Earth, and made his way home safely. So there's almost an anniversary of that date. On February 20th, a few days from today, that'll be the anniversary of when he was blasted off into space, circled the Earth, and made his way back home safely. Meanwhile, laws began to change so that black and white students could go to school together. Blacks fought for the right to sit beside whites on buses and drink from the same water fountains. At the laboratory, blacks and white computers started working together in the same offices, eating at the same lunch tables, and using the same bathrooms. This is amazing. So if you look at this, I think it's supposed to be a bus, you'll see pictures of historical black figures who fought for our rights. Like I know that's Rosa Parks, there's Martin Luther King Jr., I think that might be Catherine. So these are all the pictures of people who fought for this segregation to be coming to an end. Black and white moviegoers could sit next to each other in the same theater. Across the country, people started to think about ways to bring equality to all Americans. Christine Darden was good at math, and she loved electronic computers. She started working in Langley in 1967. Christine wanted to become an engineer, and thanks to Dorothy, Mary, and Catherine, she knew it was possible. Eventually, she became an engineer for supersonic airplanes, planes flying faster than the speed of sound. But her first job was to help with NASA's mission to the moon. The people at the laboratory prepared for years to send astronauts to the moon, about 238,900 miles away from the Earth. Wow. Finally, on July 20th, 1969, the world watched as 3 men arrived at the moon in their Apollo 11 spacecraft. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, said astronaut Neil Armstrong when he stepped onto the dusty surface. But it was also a giant leap for Dorothy, Mary, Catherine, and Christine, and all the other computers and engineers who had worked at the laboratory over the years. The moon landing was a success from takeoff to splashdown, but there was no time to rest. Once NASA landed astronauts on the moon, the people at the laboratory began dreaming of sending humans to other planets, such as Mars or Jupiter or Saturn. They started to imagine hyper-fast space planes that could travel around the Earth at 7 times the speed of sound. What an amazing accomplishment. The next adventure wouldn't be easy and would require lots of tests and lots more numbers. But Dorothy, Mary, Catherine, and Christine knew one thing. With hard work, perseverance, and a love of math, anything was possible. So, the next section is a timeline and biographies of the 4 women. So I'm going to read that tomorrow. So this will kind of be like a 2-part read aloud. But if we think about this last part of the read aloud, today's read aloud, starting to understand why the book is called Hidden Figures, because we knew about Neil Armstrong and his crew that landed on the moon, but we never really heard about these women that had a lot to do with them being able to actually even go on the spaceship and take that route and get home safely. So if it wasn't for them, they maybe wouldn't have never even landed on the moon, or it would have taken them many, many, many more years or decades even. So these women are super important to know about. And that's why they're called Hidden Figures, because they weren't really known about before this book. And there's also a movie called Hidden Figures about the same story. And that last quote, I just love it. So I'm going to read it one more time. With hard work, perseverance, and a love of math, anything was possible. So to any of you who love math, I really hope that you think about that quote and try to use that passion to do some good in the future. I hope you enjoyed this story. Stay tuned for tomorrow's part, where we're going to look at the timeline and the individual biographies of each woman. See you next time.